Yeah, so I want to share a bit about the project that I've been building recently, and it's indeed, as Xiaoming said, opened my eyes a bit as to what's possible using AI in software development. To give a bit more context to that, well, I'll get there later. Let's first go through the agenda a bit. So I'm going to talk about the setup, the context in which I was building this, dive into the workflow and how it evolved so far. I'm going to demo what I have, and then reflect a bit on what this means for us as software engineers, I think. But first, a bit about me. I work at Maqqie. Welcome at Maqqie, by the way, for the people who don't work here. I am the head of engineering, so I lead the software development teams. And I've been a software engineer myself for the last 12 years. Focused mainly on backend development, but have touched upon quite a bit of areas, and nowadays, as everyone, just exploring a lot with AI to see what's possible. All right, so what's the setup? What are we doing here? I basically built a Kotlin Spring Boot application and a lot of other stuff around it in the last 3 months. I'm spending about 20 hours a week on this, I would roughly estimate. It's a side project, I keep saying, but it's kind of getting a bit bigger than that. Whether that is good or not, I don't know. And because I'm doing this next to my job as head of engineering at Maqqie, I really don't have time to read all of the code. And that is kind of the premise of this whole talk. So with that being said, let's have a look under the hood later on in this presentation as well. Why this project? What is it specifically? It is an EHR, an EPD in Dutch, elektronisch patiëntendossier, specifically focused on the Dutch mental health care, GGZ, which is a complex regulated domain. The reason I came to this project is I have had multiple hobby projects in the past. I've built a rental platform for machinery and equipment, for example, with a few friends a few years back. I like to mess around, and for this one I was kind of looking for something that has, some application of the new technologies that are available now, specifically the transcription with AI that's nowadays possible and works very well. And my wife used to work in mental health care herself, and I remember very well, like, she stopped a few years ago, but she always spent the evenings writing the administration, like the reports for the conversations that she's had with clients. And it was tedious. She had to do it outside of working hours because all of her working hours were fully filled with these kinds of conversations. So, and overwork in healthcare is obviously an issue. There is, government projects to try and find ways to get rid of this. And, I saw an opportunity basically. So then I also found someone else who saw the same opportunity, but who's focused more on the commercial side of this. So we tagged along and are now doing this together. So I started in January 2026 after talking to this guy for a bit, and we took it off. What I know, I try to make some lists of the things I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Software engineering, I would say I'm pretty good at, doing it for 12 years. Same for software architecture. I've messed around with CI/CD pipelines. I know about software testing and quality. I've worked a lot with Spring Boot and Kotlin. Well, actually Java more than Kotlin. Kotlin started at Maqqie, I think, even. What I don't know is Vue, which I use for the front end. I chose Vue because it's what we use at Maqqie, so it's always valuable to get more insights there. I don't know a lot about Terraform. I've never really written a Terraform configuration myself. I have messed around with Python, machine learning a bit, but not in production. The healthcare domain is completely new to me. I have no idea how that usually works, except for what I heard from my wife. And at this point, I don't know my own code base. So basically, I'm trying to get this out of the door as quickly as possible. So for me, the challenge was really into what can I do with the least amount of effort to get a working prototype out of the door. And now this is annoying because the slide had some animations, but that won't work. So you're going to see all 4 steps in the evolution of my workflow in once. It is what it is. So it started with me and Claude. I had not really messed around with Claude at this point yet. At the start of January, I was mainly using Cursor at that time. So I messed around with it. I let it generate Terraform, CI/CD pipeline, and the basis of a backend application and a front-end application. And validating it, shipping it, getting it running, and accessible via the domain that I registered. And eventually, I had multiple Claude windows open. I don't know if anyone here knows about Gastown by any chance, by some guy in Silicon Valley who basically created 8 stages of AI-augmented software development, where he first shows your typical Copilot integration where you get some auto-completion. Then you have a terminal inside of your IDE where you mess around and spar with Claude, for example, and it gradually grows into only a terminal, no IDE anymore, then multiple terminals. And I was kind of challenging myself here to push myself, right? To see how much I can lean into this. And it was a very interesting experience. And at some point I had reached this point where I had multiple Claude windows open, doing work in parallel, and stuff started to break, basically. Like if you don't have multiple checkouts of the repository, then one agent will be writing tests while the other is trying to run the tests. And then you obviously get compiler errors because the other agent just changed the file that we was trying to compile. So I decided to switch to Git worktrees to have multiple checkouts at the same time. Before that, I even had multiple checkouts in different directories even. But I noticed that I was juggling Claude terminals very heavily. So I thought to myself, this can be done better. So I decided to use, I decided to start writing some batch scripting to automate this a bit more, so I wouldn't be hindered by having to juggle them. In that time, I learned a lot about the CLAUDE.md and how to tweak it. It grew very quickly because I had Claude write the CLAUDE.md, which means it just, you know how it goes with AI, it generates as much text as possible to sound smart. So I started having to trim it down, and then it grew again, and then I trimmed it down again. And I'll get a bit into that, a bit further in a later slide as well. I was also having a lot of issue with knowing what I was building. So I really reached a point where I was trying to write a lot of plan files in Markdown that Claude could use to build software. And I thought to myself, this has to be done better. I tried Beads, which is a Git-based issue tracking. I didn't like it. So I switched to a more traditional approach where I thought, well, if I have multiple agents, let's treat them as software engineers. Let's use GitLab. GitLab has issue tracking just like Jira has. And it has a very nice MCP as well, and a CLI which Claude can use to actually read the issues that it created, but it can also look at pipelines, why they failed, etc. And this worked surprisingly well. So I thought to myself, wait, why can't I, if I'm running these Claude agents almost in a non-interactive mode, why can't I run them on GitLab, in like a pipeline to make it build a specific ticket? And that worked as well, but the issue was that I saw with the Anthropic API keys that I needed to use, the usage was way more expensive than using my Claude Code subscription directly. So I was suddenly spending like €5 to build one ticket, which was unacceptable, obviously, since it's a hobby project. So I switched back to my local machine and instead had Claude use the CLI from that area. And I started juggling all of these things, built some bash scripts around it, and had this state where I could tell Claude in a new session, build this ticket, and it would do it. And how it does that, I'll get into in a bit. At this point, things were going smooth. The bash scripting was growing intensively, and as I ran into issues, I tried to fix them, as an engineer does. So, for instance, Claude builds a ticket, it creates a merge request, but then the pipeline fails because it broke a test or made some other mistake. So I extended the script to basically wait for the pipeline to be green and have it then merge it himself as part of the same cycle. I scripted this out. I didn't put it inside of the prompt so that it was way more deterministic. And at that point I thought, okay, I need an overview because I was constantly tabbing between terminals. So I built Python scripts instead of Bash, I added also a small UI, an HTTP page served with Flask with Python to see the status of all the agents, and added a small SQL database in SQLite actually that stores the state of the runners that are running, the agents basically. And as I was going, I kept adding agents. Like at some point I added a pipeline fixer, because what happens if two merge requests that both have a flyway patch with the same version get merged into main, then the pipeline breaks on main because there are duplicate flyway versions. So I had to fix that, added another type of agent, added a monitor that is also prompted basically, and it has the assignment to see how the agents are doing, and if they are stuck, to kill them. Basically also offloading that work to AI as well. And then that's when it got pretty cool, I think. And this is kind of the workflow I'm still in. I'm still improving, but these are the major changes I made, I think, along the way. So how does it look? This is the dashboard that I developed. It's obviously just auto-generated by Claude. It's just a simple HTML page. But you can see here that I have three, you can barely read it, but it says ticket solvers here. Those are running and building these specific work items from GitLab. And I have the option to view the prompt that they received and to stop them. And this is the monitor that is running. It runs every 5 minutes and has a task to basically check all the other agents to see how they're doing and adjust where necessary. Trigger a pipeline fixer when main is broken, stuff like that. Yeah? Huh? Oh. And below the table that you saw on top, here is an event log, and in certain stages in the Python script, it, for instance, outputs the Claude output to a record in the database as well. So you can see here that the monitor ran, it did a status check, it saw that 2 agents were running, one was running for 12, one for 6 minutes. They looked like they were doing their work. It merged 3 orphaned merge requests where the pipeline had passed, so it also does that. And it started a new ticket solver to solve another ticket that it saw was open. And like this, it suddenly just keeps going. It produces code. Question is, how good is it? But we'll get to that. And the funny thing about this whole flow is, like, as I was working, I reached points where Claude got stuck for reasons such as that it didn't know what to do. A choice had to be made, functionally or technically. And so I gave it the instruction, you can tag me in GitLab if something is stuck, and then put a label on the ticket to mark it as needs refinement. And while I'm working here at Maqqie, I get emails like these where the AI basically doesn't know, like, you asked me to remove this certain part of the OpenAPI specification, this specific file, but in this file there's multiple features. So it wasn't just the APIs that I asked to be removed. And it didn't know what to do, and I got a mail stating like, and it was super mind-blowing, like, oh, this is no one sending me an email, it's a computer. I guess I haven't played with OpenClaw or stuff like that, but I imagine it's something like this as well. The same effect that it has on you, that this is really a thing now. And you also get issues like these, and these are great. I call it the pipeline fixer thrashing. As I said, I had an agent that fixes my pipelines, and in these pipelines I run all kinds of tests, like static code analysis, backend, front-end testing. Also have a stage for end-to-end testing, where it starts a complete environment of my front-end, back-end, a database, and it runs playwright end-to-end tests, which it wrote itself. But the funny thing is, I don't know here if anyone has experience with end-to-end testing and how unreliable they are and how much of a pain they are to fix usually. We're not the only ones dealing with that. So you can see here that, you know, on the day it spent like over 10 commits trying to resolve end-to-end test flakiness, which is very familiar for people who have tried to do this in the past. Charling is looking like, now I know what Luc was talking about with the end-to-end testing. It's, you know, very recognizable. But the thing is, it's also just keeps going, and it keeps going in loops, trying to fix what the other agent tried and stuff like that. So it's hilarious. With that being said, let's go a bit more into like how I manage these agents and what I ask them to do. As I said, at first I started writing a Claude.md with context about the project. I tried adding some functional descriptions and more like a vision for the product so that it could use that as well, but it was basically never used, I think. So I removed that again. And now, if you look at the Claude.md at this point, and I can show it in a bit, it's actually mainly about giving it the context that it is working in. Because they run in this headless state where they just get a task basically to solve, they need to know that they're in a non-interactive mode and that they are working within the context of a system that I set up, basically. So that's clearly in the Claude.md for like a ticket solver that you just saw, sees in the Claude.md that it is a ticket solver and how it should then operate. So if you don't know what to do, tag me in the GitLab ticket so that I know and put it in a specific state, and then you can shut down. And it handles this very well, and that way it keeps going. The more technical side of things, I actually moved outside of the Claude.md and instead put in ADRs, in this case, architecture decision records. It's very similar to what we do at Maqqie for RFCs, requests for comment. In other words, these are documents that you write as an engineer and normally share with your colleagues to basically formulate a specific decision that you want to make, why you're making this, what the alternatives are, and what the impact of it will be, and some other points as well. But I'm instead using these to create a history of all of the technical decisions made so that the agent can drag it into context wherever needed because it's in a file in the Git repo itself. And it goes into stuff such as what is our backend architecture, what is the intended goal of it, but also, you know, why did we choose for specific technologies, how are emails sent through the system, what did we choose for that, and how is it integrated, stuff like that. And I'm also using Claude Skills, and this is the funny part because I'm doing this in my spare time, and I also have a family. I have 2 young kids, so I lack a lot of time, basically. Joost, our product manager, asked me at some point, like, "Oh, do you use Claude Skills?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I have like a bunch of them." And he said, "How does it work?" I said, "I have no idea," because I don't ever really ask Claude to program directly. I don't know if it's actually using the skills, but I think it does. But it could be that it doesn't. And this is something that I need to extend on and experiment further with, because you'll see in a bit, I missed some parts, I would say, in this process. What kind of stuff did I document? I think I already mentioned it a bit. You know, for the backend, I chose a DDD architecture. But the thing is, what I know about DDD or value the most is the idea of bounded contexts. That you make at least some separation in your code base to have specific areas so that you could potentially later on split them off into separate microservices. I really see the value in that. I really don't know much about whether a rich or anemic domain model is good or not. Like, I have too little experience with actually developing those things to make good judgment on that. And we'll get a bit into that, but my consensus is a bit that if you don't know, then Claude also doesn't know. That's basically how it works usually. I mentioned the OpenAPI specifications as well. I really believe in contract-first development, so I generate front-end and back-end code based on a shared definition that lives in a YAML. And there's way more, but we can go. I'm going to go through the code base in a bit. I'm going to use all of you to review my code, by the way, if you didn't know yet. So what's the size of the project at this point? I have like 100,000 lines of Kotlin code, over 600 files. The same for Vue and TypeScript. The JSON that you see is the translation files because I support Dutch and English, which I just let Claude generate as well. It's surprisingly bad at that, by the way, at doing it afterwards, so make sure you do this up front. Because it doesn't know how to search for text inside of your HTML in a smart way. I've done maybe 5 iterations already saying like translate everything in the front end, and it just does a few pages. and then the rest it's completely forgotten. So one of the lessons learned. What does this consist of right now? I have a bunch of domain names already. We have the app, that's the front end basically. We have docs, which is actually not hosted in Google Cloud, but in GitLab Pages. It's a wiki for the product. I thought it would be a good idea, so I added that as well. I have a client portal for clients who are inside the product. If they need to approve a certain document or something from the health practitioner, they can do it there. I have a self-hosted transcription service in Python, which runs the actual whisper from OpenAI, but I run it myself, because why not? Mainly because of cost of these APIs if you use them for instance, Google Cloud. I have the API. This is the brunt of the Kotlin code, obviously, which is hosted there. And there's something I'm building right now, which is an admin, which is like a back office for myself later on to manage the organizations using the product. But with that being said, it's best if I probably just show you what it is and what it does right now. So this is it. This is the app. It has a bunch of stuff already because building features goes very fast, obviously. We have clients that you can view, you can open them. There's general information. You can manage the state of this person. You can set up a care trajectory where this is kind of stuff that's important to be able to correctly do the billing later on. There's a dossier where there's an AI summary based on all the transcripts that were done of the appointments, which is obviously a part of the unique selling point of this product. You can see all of the appointments that are planned. There's documents that can be downloaded and made visible in the client portal, for instance, for approval. There's groups of clients, which I don't have a demo of. There's an agenda where people can manage appointments. They can plan appointments for other healthcare workers. The rooms can be reserved, all of the things you would expect to be there are there. Full day appointments, recurring appointments. And this was pretty well tested by the guy I'm building this with, and it works very well, which honestly to me was a bit of a surprise. Like, I couldn't imagine that it worked the first time, but it did. There's this whole complex thing about forms that can be filled in, but also automatically filled in with AI based on a transcript. And there's the whole billing flow towards the health insurance, which has obviously this is the most complex domain logic part. It still needs to be tuned further, but that's mainly because it's pretty hard to learn a domain in 3 months, like healthcare. That's my biggest bottleneck, to be honest, how quickly I can understand how this product needs to function so it actually provides value for the people using it, which is interesting. And then there's the whole, kind of generic stuff like management of users, the organization itself, the roles that you have, the teams that exist, all kinds of other organizational management things. It's pretty extensive, I would say, and I'm still somewhat impressed by how I managed to build this in like 3 months. I think it's pretty crazy and weird that this is possible now, because the last project I did, I spent 1.5 years and had it was 20% of the size of this, because I had to write all of that Vue code myself and all of that Kotlin myself. So I guess now comes the ugly part, potentially. It's arguable, I would say, but let's just do it. Let's go and open the IDE. Nice. So let's have a look at the code, I would say, because a lot of stuff happens here. And my question to you all is basically and this is interactive, so feel free to raise your voice if you see ugly stuff. Is this good software, quality-wise? I can already give some insight into that. I ran code with coverage, tests with coverage before this session. I didn't get it running here, but we have about 30% code coverage, including integration tests. It's on the low end, I would say. And then the other question is, are there actually any assertions in the test? Because, it's the easiest way to fix a test, right? Just remove the assertions. So, looking at this, let's start with an entity first. And based on this, I had some comments already from other engineers at Maqqie, like, well, there are some things you can improve here, like the usage of, well, this is actually a bad example because this actually does use vol, but this was one of the comments that I got, like, why use open var everywhere if you're writing Kotlin? Also, can anyone tell me, do you need equals and hash code in Kotlin? You do, right? Yeah. For JPA you need it. Yeah.
Var is also a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Does anyone see any bad practices or, clearly Java code written in Kotlin? Stuff like that is what you see quite often. Feel free to shout, by the way. I can give you a mic if you want it, but I doubt it. I know my crowd. One other thing that springs to me, at least, is the fact that these table definitions are very complete. This is not something I usually do. I usually use, and I do here as well, is Flyway. So the DB migrations are here. So there's quite a few of them already. I think 200 is what we're at right now. This manages the schema, not JPA. Like, I don't have the thing on for that. So it doesn't necessarily add value, I would say. If it's inconsistent, then it's an even bigger issue in my opinion. But I would personally just have add table and then no other things behind it. Anyone else? I mean, I think it's...
Let's look at the service maybe?
Yeah, let's look at the service indeed. That's a good point. So here's our function. It's not specifically Kotlin, but one thing, like I said, right, with DDD, I didn't really ask it to make a rich domain. So it didn't. And you can see that in the entity that it just has, the values and nothing else. And also, if you look at the amount of stuff in the application layer, there's just a huge list of services. So, at the start I was focused on creating these 9 domains and separating them, these bounded contexts. And normally I would say later on, once it grows, you start making some packages to distribute these things, like making a care trajectory package. This is not something that Claude does for you, as you can see. Like, it just puts everything in one place. Although the domains still exist, so we do still have the billing, the dossier with even more stuff, and the platform domain as well. Although this one is practically empty, I think. Oh, it's not. Okay, it's not that bad. Anything else you want to see from this project in terms of code? Just shout. I'll open it, and God forbid it's good, because I never saw it. So it's blind faith.
Yeah. So what I see quickly is that indeed it's quite Java-ish.
Yeah.
It's throwing HTTP exception in service, probably nobody would do. They use still optional, not nullable, so these kind of things are not opted. But I believe that if you have a decent scale that tells how good Kotlin code looks like, you would also get decent Kotlin code. So if you would invest in refactoring that at that level, I think it still would be considerably better.
Yeah.
Maybe repeat that for me.
Yeah, exactly. So indeed, if you would write a good skill, it's clearly Java code written in Kotlin. It doesn't use idiomatic Kotlin, as they say. A good skill for Claude, so that it knows how to write actual Kotlin, would make this incredibly better. And that's actually also one of the things I think Claude is really good at, is refactoring. If it has working business logic with tests, and you say refactor each and every service one by one with tickets, for example, it will be able to do that. Yeah.
There are also plenty of comments. So if AI is generating and at some point we want to review and learn what's going on, it's like okay or acceptable. But maintaining, in general, maintaining these much of comments also like needs at least tokens.
Yeah, true. So I do think it's valuable in this case indeed, because it at least shows what assumptions it made, because I didn't, go in that much detail sometimes for the actual even functional implications. But indeed, yeah, it adds extra context. It's definitely something to take into account.
But also you have to trust that the comments are also updated with the code changes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, and that's the thing I always have with AI. Do engineers always do that? Right? I forget. to update comments.
I think that the point is that it's maybe a higher amount of comments than engineers would write, which, if this is ever going to be maintained by engineers, is sort of like, it's more prone to getting out of sync.
Yeah.
But if AI does it, then it's usually good enough to include it.
Yeah.
AI is not that dumb to rely on the logic based on a comment. It always check the logic.
Yeah, true, it does indeed.
And the code which you're not going to maintain at all, humans are never going to maintain, then it's fine.
Then, yeah, is it though? The long-term implications, right? Why do we need software quality? It's not for the short term. It's for in 5 years.
I have a question.
And that's the scary part. Yeah.
Maybe repeat it, but did you check whether there are assertions in the test?
Yeah, we could. Let's do it. Let's open it up. Like, I checked some, but there's so many that obviously I'm never going to open the same one that I did before. Let's do the application layer. That's the first thing, right? This domain had way more services than there are tests. So it's already something to look into. So there's a bunch of setup being done. There's a create document function, probably a helper function to create mocks and stuff. So it looks like there are for this one. So it verifies the call to the repository under the hood. It checks the response. Yeah, it looks nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. So that's good. Let's try one more. Yeah, also has assertions. So it doesn't try and cheat. That's good. Anyway, let's continue. Because now we're going to get into the really ugly bit. 5 minutes? Yeah.
Feasible?
Yeah, it's feasible, for sure. This doesn't take that long. Because I mentioned I was maintaining Terraform and without much knowledge of it, right? This is where it gets interesting because at the end of February, I think, I was, impressed by how fast it was going. I was, riding on this high of like, oh, I'm building this platform in a crazy short amount of time. And I was going at it in the evening and I said, I should probably have a look at my infrastructure. I mean, I have a production environment, but I never made it production ready, with proper encryption of the network, with backups, monitoring, etc. But I'm not going to do that myself, so let's just let Claude do it, right? So I said, make it production ready, drafted a very nice plan, and I thought to myself, this looks great. You go and run it, I'll go and get something to drink, and that's when I came back to this disaster, and I shared it in Slack at Maqqie as well. It's probably too small for you to read, but it's like, oh, the SQL instance is gone. This is a major production incident. The user needs to know what happened and how to potentially recover. It managed to delete my production database. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm like, this only happens in blog posts on the internet somewhere. This isn't real life. But it actually happened. And luckily, we're not live. We don't have clients. So no harm was done. But we also didn't have backups. Because that was part of this plan, to set that up, basically. So, and the funny thing about it to me was I didn't kill it immediately when I saw this. And it was thrashing around. It was in a loop, being critical of itself. Oh no, what did I do? I need to tell the user, maybe I could try this to recover. And then it went back like, oh no, nothing's possible. I can't find anything. I'm lost. Like, I'm lucky it wasn't like physically there, because otherwise I think it would have jumped off a building. Like seriously, it was pretty intense. So this got me out of my high, I would say. This was for me like a realization moment. Okay, I've reached the edge of the speed that I can get at. Had to restore all of my testing data that I had in production. All of my clients were gone, etc. Huge bummer. But now I have backups that are not part of the SQL instance. So for those interested, if you set up a VPC network inside Google Cloud and you want to link it to a SQL instance, the only way that's possible is by recreating the SQL instance. Terraform does this if you run Terraform apply. So just so you know, it could happen to you. I might have made this same mistake myself if I did it manually. It's also a side note to make, because I didn't know this. So yeah, what can we learn from this? And then I want to wrap it up, because I need to wrap it up. I said it already, but if I don't know something, Claude also doesn't know it. And it'll dance around what you don't know very elegantly. So your experience is really the quality ceiling. And we had it here at Maqqie as well with Joost, our product manager again, who I mentioned before. He is trying to proof of concept something for Maqqie and using AI and wants to, try and apply that himself so he doesn't need to rely on the engineers that often. And what does that mean, making an application production ready? And because Joost has no technical experience, I sat with him and I said, well, let Claude draft a plan to make it production ready. And Joost spent an hour, maybe 2 hours, sparring with Claude, writing a large, four MD files with a huge plan. Lots of text. There was nothing technical in there. It managed to completely subvert the topic of how the actual software architecture was going to look. Like where the front and back end is, what database is it going to be stored in. And it was so long, and it made so much sense when you read it, but it said exactly nothing. Which to me was a very clear proof, like, okay, if you don't know, then Claude also doesn't know. And I think that's really a big lesson here. Some stuff I do differently. I think specialized review agents, or as Urs already said it, writing a good skill for it actually knowing how to program good Kotlin. I had a lot of issues with contracts between the Python and Kotlin service because that's an area where I didn't use contract first development. Do more domain modeling up front and also during the process, so it doesn't create, 6 nice domains and then just puts all of the services in one package. And also never auto-approve destructive operations. That's a big lesson for me, although I didn't know it was destructive at that time. And the big question here is, I think, is this still software engineering? And what does this imply for us in our daily work? Because, yeah, I don't know. I think we're, like, as I said, you still need the knowledge. You can't just be not a programmer and build something, but it's definitely going to change our work week in the stuff that we're doing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes for further questions and discussion. Anyone have a question? And I'll get the mic to you. If not, I have some questions. Yeah, Max.
Yeah, so you were showing the code quality of AI, but I was wondering, could you just set up a code quality document or anything like that, so that it adheres to your desired code quality standards?
For sure, that's basically what we just discussed. Like if you have review agents or skills, any way to provide Claude the context so that it can properly do the changes needed, yeah, you can. The choice I made is merge on a green pipeline. I don't have a specific review agent. Maybe that's a good thing to add. Like that's what I said, a specialized review agent that has a bit more context on what is good TypeScript, what is good Vue, what is good Kotlin.
I saw some Dutch variable names.
Yeah, that's another thing indeed. Because I find them very hard to translate, and I saw it before as well indeed. Like for some it translated it, but there's a lot of Dutch stuff in there, which is also something I would never do. But apparently if you don't guide it, it will start doing that. Like I sometimes type in Dutch to Claude, and that's how it happened, I think. Good one.
But at the same time, I'm wondering, like, does code quality really matter if AI is the only one working on it?
Yeah, and that's a good question, I think, and that's what I said about the long-term implication of this. Because this is for 3 months. That's way beyond the, or way before when technical debt actually starts making an impact. Because that happens after 4-5 years is my, completely gut feeling estimate. Is like, that's when you start grinding to a halt. That's when features suddenly start getting very hard to implement because you're dragging along all of this stuff that you've built. So I will probably suffer from this later on down the road, and I'll have to pay that debt, basically. But on the other hand, I do get it up in the air within 3 months. So it's choices you have to make, I think, in the end.
All right, thanks.
Did you see a noticeable difference depending on the model you use, so which one you use, and do you see differences between the models? Like Opus, that's the best one we have right now.
Yeah, I basically only used Opus 4.5. So I didn't play around with that because that's not why I was doing this. It was to get something functionally out the door, and not so much to learn what the best models were. And like if I never noticed issues with the model itself. However that would have looked, I don't even know if I would have noticed.
Now, Opus is really very best, and in
Yeah.
my experience, really makes a difference. So probably that's why I didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
Probably use low models to have that. Probably.
Probably, yeah. That's also what I learned later on, is that apparently end of last year was this, when Opus 4.5 was released, is exactly the point when this became possible. I had no idea, but I just got lucky, basically. So.
Luc, I have 2 questions. The first question is that you showed you use AI to solve the bugs. Did you ever also try to use AI to find the bug itself, or try to automatically fetch the mismatch between the business requirement and your implementation?
Not so much, because I find it very hard to give AI the right tools to do proper testing. You know, kind of like manual testing. It's not manual because it's AI doing it, but so I do use it to troubleshoot. So I say like, hey, this isn't working. I see these stack traces in the front end in the console, for example. Investigate why this is happening. And then it does its thing. It can also access the Google Cloud logging, for example, for the backend. So it can also do investigation on that area, but not really to find bugs proactively, no. But it is an interesting area to explore further in, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. My second question is about, because you said you use the CLAUDE.md and also the ADR files to store the AI-generated documentation. Do you know any plugin or some tools can help the cloud to accumulate all the knowledge from your application, provide a consistent knowledge base for the future usage, instead of, because otherwise every time I prompt something I need to write it down, and I'm not sure even myself doesn't remember what documentation I generated. It's a bunch of file, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, do you have any more other people have experience or tool now can help to like the AI more like human being to accumulate the knowledge to help us in the long term?
Yeah, I think before I started talking, I was talking to some other people here as well, and that's, in my view, what I see mostly is the biggest challenge is making sure that Claude has exactly the right context for the task at hand, and that's such a rapidly developing field at this point that I don't think we're there yet. But what Claude does itself, Claude Code, with starting an explore agent, like a sub-agent that will go through your code base with a specific task and write a summary of what it found, which then Claude, the main agent, uses to make decisions. I think that's one of the big improvements and one of the reasons why Claude Code is such a well-used tool, because that's very effective. You know, using another LLM to condense and present so that the main LLM solving the task can use that. But yeah, as I said, this is so rapidly developing, and I haven't really seen or tried anything specific in terms of tools, no. It's mainly, this is what I chose, but it's basically just a folder with a lot of MD files in it for now. So it's not that exciting, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, good presentation. In Dutch we would say, je hebt veel meters gemaakt. My question is, we are using some soft software at the moment, and I'm ready to move to another software package. Are you ready to accept clients?
No.
What would be needed to get to that step?
Yeah, that's a very good question indeed. And getting software out the door without any security vulnerabilities in it is an art in and of itself. Maybe I can use Claude Mythos to do some analysis on the code base. That could work once it's generally available. For now it's going to be a combination of manual validation, finding someone who will do a pen test, getting a third party to actually validate everything. We're also starting conversations right now for doing an ISO and NAN certification ourselves for this product. So we'll also, from that angle, see if we've covered all our bases. I think that's going to be the main thing. But it is the goal to eventually reach the stage where we can go live with this, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, so two-part question. One is continuing, one is what Max asked. Are you really bothered 5 years down the line, you will have to hire someone, engineers to really look into the code you wrote? Or do you think 5 years down the line, because you see the way the models are progressing, and we see a lot of shift in the world with spec-driven development, that you only write the specs, it's up to the AI to build it, and you change something in the spec is changed. So AI throws away the mess. It's like how the compiler compiles the machine code, right? You're not bothered about the machine code. The same thing, your code, you no longer will be bothered about it because it's the headache of AI. You're only bothered about the specs. So do you think like 5 years down the line it will be more into that direction?
I think if we all, as all software engineers in the world, make some very opinionated choices as to languages, frameworks, and patterns that we choose, then we can get there. But the fact is that, as I said, what I don't know, Claude also doesn't know. So it will grind to a halt due to technical debt at some point, I think, unless I am skilled enough as an engineer to dive in and maybe together with Claude get clear where the technical debt is and create a plan to actually solve it. But that's something I'll still have to do, right? And even that part is going to go faster with AI, for sure. But it'll still need to be done. So, and that's where I see still like the job security for us as engineers, because we're still needed. I don't worry about that yet, no.
The AGI can.
Yeah.
And this more or less his question later, what is his name? Sorry. Hi. Hello. Hi. Sorry. So you were asking about, is there a way to automatically update the documentation? Involve it based on the code, right?
Not always just update documentation. I just want like a sort of a consistent and centralized way to collect all your prompt information to the cloud, and then AI agent can use all the information in the future, your interaction. So kind of just a self agent. They have accumulate and learn from the history and use in the future. So that's not need, okay, I just look at the ADR file. I can also, maybe I didn't even write the ADR file, I will save some information from the past, then use this information to make the judgment in the future.
There are tools like, which can create an ASP memory file,
yeah,
which can be based on your Git hooks, which automatically replan and create a memory graph of your whole project, with its connection packages, functionalities, and what was the last radius of the change, based on your pull and push things. Maybe that's something you're looking into.
Yeah, could be.
We're out of time?
Yeah.
So let's have a break.
Thanks, everyone.